Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here again. My name is Deb Heck, and I'm a school counselor with the Family and Student Support Team in District 6. And I also work with the crisis team and work with the Worksite Wellness Committee, and very um, passionate about bringing mental health and wellness supports for our staff. Um, and so that's part of the reason I'd like to present this week. For those of you who are at the live one, I'm going to have to just give myself up that we had lots of technical difficulties. I had a virus on my computer yesterday, and then I got a new computer today. And I don't know, Zoom was not doing it. It just was, Chrome wasn't downloaded. It's beyond my abilities to know why it wasn't working, but it just wasn't. So here's let you in on the secret that I'm just recording this again. But I problem solved and found some ways to be able to show the videos and things. So I wanted to go ahead and do it again for those of you who weren't here. So today we're going to be talking about strengthening your emotional intelligence, and I wanted everyone to share one thing that made you smile today. On Monday, I did a session about choices to avoid burnout. And one of the things we talked about was happy triggers, that they release those dopamine in your brain and give you that happy feeling. And thinking about something that made you smile releases that. So say it out loud or just think about it. We had a lot of good shares when we were live earlier too, about just good things that happened with seeing kids after daycare. That's dopamine for sure. Being able to have a good day at school. I got to see a social worker and school psychologist who were working with a student to get him some new shoes, because he was very attached to these old shoes that had good memories. It was so sweet, and they were able to get him into these new shoes for new memories. And so lots of dopamine for today. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, also people might call it EQ. It's the ability to recognize your emotions and to understand what they're telling you, and knowing that emotions have a purpose. They're not just, the touchy-feely, fluff stuff, that they serve a purpose, and knowing what they're telling us is important. Realizing how your emotions affect others and knowing how others feel. So when we talk about, make sure I'm recording. Okay, sorry. When we talk about EQ, sometimes we also think about our IQ, which is our intelligence quotient. That you can have a test that gives you a number of where your IQ falls, and that's your skills, logic, reasoning. And that number is pretty set. Like, it's not going to get higher. We can sharpen it. We can do things like, learning a new language is something that really can sharpen your IQ. Sudoku puzzles, we're doing our Wordles every day. Those keep our IQ sharp. I used my IQ today to try to do some problem solving, to figure out how to come back and record this presentation. So it's an important part too. And then our EQ is where we're perceiving, understanding, and regulating emotions. It's how we are living out in the world with others. So if you've read anything about emotional intelligence, you've probably heard about Daniel Goleman. He's kind of the guru when it comes to emotional intelligence. And his book is Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. So according to him, he talks about emotional intelligence, or IQ is about 20% of an indicator for success, and that 80% would be our emotional intelligence. Because you can have a very high IQ, you can have high reasoning and logic skills, but if you're not able to work with others or to keep yourself regulated, these 5 things: be self-aware, have motivation to do anything with it, have empathy to know how others are feeling and being able to connect, and then have those social skills, that high IQ isn't going to take you far with success in most places. I'm not going to get into this debate, which is more important. People like to put that out like IQ versus EQ. I think they're both important. I mean, we need to be able to have logic and reasoning to be able to figure things out, like how to come back and do this. And then I needed the emotional intelligence to, be regulated and not, throw my computer and have to get a new one tomorrow. So the first one is self-awareness, and simply how it sounds is that it's an ability to identify your own feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. So thinking about, how am I feeling in this moment? And do things feel easy or do they feel difficult? And then thinking, do I have a smile on my face or do I have a frown, and why? I often have to say to myself, like, I might have a frown and I don't even know why I have it on my face. I'm like, okay, wait, fix your face. Like, people are looking and thinking you're really angry about something and I'm not. So I'll ask myself, why am I frowning? I'm not really sure. How are my feelings? Oh, okay. So I'm gonna fix my face so people aren't thinking, dang, what's with her today? This is a self-awareness test, and we're not going to really go through like answers, but I just thought some of them were interesting, is like knowing how aware you are of different parts of your life. So I think if you just wanted to look at them for a minute, maybe pick one that you're like, oh yeah, that one I have got. Oh, this one would be interesting to maybe look into. So not like a percentage you get on this test, but maybe something of like I wonder what I would say about that answer. And then self-regulation. So this is where we went a little south last time. So I got it now, guys. I'm just gonna show it on a different screen and share my sounds. So this is a clip. Okay, first of all, didn't realize how many younger people have not seen the movie Father of the Bride. It's a classic. I think if you haven't seen it, you need to put it on your old movie watch list, I guess. But this is a scene where Steve Martin is already very dysregulated. He's very stressed. His stress levels are super high. And he is put into a situation where he really isn't able to regulate anymore. So let's just watch this.
As I was escaping, would I mind escaping to the market and picking up something for dinner? Sure, that was all I needed. A busy supermarket. I needed to drive, mellow out, get my mind off the wedding. But mellowing out was not in the cards.
Yeah. Excuse me, sir. What are you doing?
I'll tell you what I'm doing. I want to buy 8 hot dogs and 8 hot dog buns to go with them. But no one sells 8 hot dog buns. They only sell 12 hot dog buns. So I end up paying for 4 buns I don't need. So I am removing the superfluous buns.
I'm sorry, sir, but you're going to have to pay for all 12 buns. They're not marked individually.
Yeah. You want to know why? Because some big shot over at the Wiener Company got together with some big shot over at the Bun Company and decided to rip off the American public. Because they think the American public is a bunch of trusting nitwits who'll pay for things they don't need rather than make a stink. Well, they're not ripping off this nitwit anymore because I'm not paying for one more thing I don't need. George Banks is saying no.
Who's George Banks?
Guys, classic movie. You need to put it on your list if you haven't seen it. So that's an extreme, but I think you can put it to like, an everyday too. Like, are you feeling stressed about something already and you go into another situation knowing like your stress level's already up and it's not going to take much more to dysregulate you? Hopefully not for a call for security in a grocery store for a real problem. I mean, I agree, it is a problem that they sell hot dogs and hot dog buns in different amounts or different counts. Like, but in your right regulated mind, would you be in a store talking about the whoever's in charge of the wiener factory or whatever he called it. No. So really thinking about whatever this issue is it something that has to be addressed right now? Is it something, and most of the time it's not. Like most of the time we can overlook it or pause to be able to come back to it when we're in a more regulated state. In the grand scheme of things, how important is this? Am I able to walk away from the situation and gain some time and perspective? So while that was an extreme example, I feel like maybe in our own minds, we could think of some where we're like, oh, if I'd walked away from that, I wouldn't have handled it in that fashion. The next is so big, our motivation. I mean, we can have all the great skills, you know, have great regulation, our IQ, all of those things. But if we don't have the motivation or the why of what we're doing it, in my mind, it's just doing, and that's not providing any emotional intelligence growth. It's just doing. So how do we actually be in the moment and motivate? And that's with our why. So looking at these and thinking about your why is the purpose, cause, or belief that inspires you. What would be your why? If you had a choice of what your why is today, and it can be personal, it can be professional, it could be both. I'd have you put it in the chat, but I'm here by myself. So. Brene Brown, nobody says it better than she does in this clip. I can't explain empathy much better than she does. So we are going to look at her clip about empathy. We're going to get out of the grocery store. Okay. There you go.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Nobody says it better. Rarely does a response make something better. It's the connection. And it could be the big life situations, or it could be, things that are a problem to that person. Whether, it doesn't have to be a big problem, it's their problem, and that connection, it's important. I also like this Maya Angelou quote that says, at the end of the day, people won't remember what you said or did. They will remember how you made them feel. And to be vulnerable, this is something that we all make not mistakes, but we make mistakes on this. Yeah, it is mistakes. Like where, somebody might be sharing something, and to be vulnerable, I'll share with you, before spring break, I was talking with a coworker, and they were sharing a lot of stuff that was like rough at work. And instead of like just being in the moment, I did the silver lining. I said, hey, well, we got one more day till spring break. And well, it didn't make that feel better at that time. And I was trying to fix it. Instead, and then I left and was going to another school, and had to think on it and give that person a call later and just say, hey, it sounded like things were really frustrating, and sorry to hear it's so rough right now. And, is there support I can offer, or, just let me know. And I just want you to know, I'm thinking about you. It's tough. This is a tough time. And just not even to try to fix it, but just to be in it with her. So that's what I love about emotional intelligence, though, is that I have watched this Brene Brown video 300 times probably. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but many a time. And I still make mistakes on it. And so it's about reflecting and saying, didn't hit that one right. This is just I think, nice to have some things, like if you're uncomfortable, you don't know what to say when people are sharing, being able to have some things that you could say, like some responses to come back with already thought of. So like when somebody's sharing, and you're like, oh, just be positive. We've talked about that toxic positivity where, somebody shares a problem, if they're allowed, you can be a positive person and have a problem. And so sometimes we want to just brush over it. And so instead of just saying, just stay positive, it's like, well, you don't have a problem. Then maybe say, well, that must be really hard. Instead of saying everything happens for a reason, we can say, I'm sorry you're going through this. And leave it at that. I think you're so human nature to try to add more, but just leave it at that. I'm sorry you're going through this, and listen. Instead of things will work out, look on the bright side. It's okay to say, dude, sometimes things really suck. What support look like to you? And being in that moment with them. And then the last one is social skills. I think we all know, like, self-aware people kind of know like what their comfort zone is. Maybe I'm more of an extrovert, I'm more of an introvert, and it's kind of hard for me to start engaging with people, but it's a good social skill to have, even when it's a little scratchy, is what I call it. When it's uncomfortable, it's scratchy. But to engage for a short period of time and make those connections is important. So to have that back pocket question, I stole that saying from somebody, and I can't remember who to quote it, but have that question is just ready to flip out. Like, like, what's some hobbies you like to do? Or how was your weekend? And then really listen. Listen more, talk less. And Kelly and I are adding smile because we just saw Hamilton. So we're going to say smile more. And then remember, next time you see them, remember their name, remember the stories they told you, be genuinely interested and say, hey, last time we talked, you talked about your garden. How's that going? And it can be a connection and a good social skill that when they leave talking to you, they're like, oh, wow, they remembered that about me. Some ways to raise your IQ is just practice humility. Like, nobody's perfect at this. nobody's perfect at it. And just being humble and knowing like it takes, taking that responsibility for mistakes you make, reflecting on how you've acted in stressful situations, and really observing how you react with others, and improving your listening skills. And all of those things, thank goodness to neuroplasticity, we can improve. And we're able to make pathways stronger in those areas. I added an optional homework. This is like just like a little self quiz. If anybody was really interested in taking, answer some questions about what of those parts of emotional intelligence maybe you feel like you could be stronger at, or and then I like it because it comes with like some resources too. And then I also added our system of support webpage. I put that in every training just so that a reminder to put it out there that we have supports at the district level that you can share with your peers if somebody is, it's a good resource to send a peer to if they're needing some support. Also, it's just good to look at when you're like not in a time of stress, so you know where it is. There's a virtual calming room, which is good for us and for students. So I hope there was something that was helpful, and I just appreciate all of you who were here for the live just series of events. It was a good time. What are you gonna do, guys? But I appreciate all of you, and please reach out if you have any questions. DHEC at Greeley Schools, and we'll see you at the next session.